but even the people that design and build, maintain, and support the control systems within their plant that make the goods, which provides revenue for those folks to get a paycheck, are disinterested in how to provide a greater degree of security within that environment.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, I'm Craig Duckworth.
And I'm Dino Buslaki.
How are you doing today, Dino?
I'm good. Fall's finally getting here, I think.
Yes, it is. I went out and took a little walk a while ago. It was beautiful outside, 70 degrees, phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I got a topic today I think I want to talk about. Why organizations that are investing are trying to do the right things, that have made an investment, still, I guess, experience a breach or still have issues, and maybe some of the things that could be leading to why that is. Because as a board member, I say, hey, Dino, here's $1 million to fix the OT cyber problem that we have. Go run off and do with as you please. And you spend the money, and in 6 months, we have an issue. Whatever that is, whether it's material, non-material, whatever it is, something still happens. Where are organizations falling short? And I made a kind of a topics list, if you want to call it, that I'd like to kind of walk through and see where you think makes the most sense.
Talk about investments, right? It's like somebody who goes out and buys a high-tech vehicle. Let's just say a Tesla, right? And they spend 70, 80 grand on this car. They're probably using 30% of the capabilities of the technology in that vehicle. Not taking advantage of all the things that these cars can do. It's crazy, right? If you look at a new car, and I see the same thing in the investments that they make in technology, especially around cybersecurity, when it comes to an area where they're unfamiliar with it, right? I mean, if you've been a driver for 30 years of your life, and you've been driving cars for 30 years, you got a pretty good idea how to drive a car. You know what the rules of the road are, how to make it stop, how to go, turn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine doing the same thing with technology that you've bought, and you're using just a small percentage of the capabilities of that technology. I've checked the box. I bought a new car, and it's getting me point to A to B. But are you really taking advantage of all of the technologies that are available from that vehicle, right? And do you understand it? And the answer to that is no, you don't, because you're not learning anymore per se. Especially if you bought the car and you gave it to one of your kids, right? They might get more out of it than you, but you as the owner of the car really aren't sure per se. And we've seen that with these technologies in these manufacturing environments that have made these investments, big companies, large companies, global companies, and seeing a third or half of their assets, right? Not really stretching the legs of this technology to be able to improve their cybersecurity posture, right? Even to the extent of helping them improve their operational efficiencies within their manufacturing facilities,
I look at it, and I have that, let's call it issue, every day. I bought a cell phone. I make phone calls, and occasionally I'll text. And other than that, I really don't do anything. And it's got like a terabyte of storage, and it's got a process. It can do as much as my laptop almost. If I chose to do it, I can put any app in the world on it. I can do anything with that thing.
But it can track your vitals in your body.
Yeah. And I make a phone call with it, and I text with it, and that's about the extent. I don't play games on it. I don't do anything else with it, but I don't need everything it does. And I for sure don't understand all of the feature function capabilities of that device. And I use it every day for what I'm comfortable with. Maybe organizations are getting comfortable and not trying to better understand the limitations of the technology.
I just think it's like AI. The world is changing so rapidly. People just can't keep up with it. They're exhausted. Like what we would say for clients that have invested in these technologies, they get alert fatigue, right? When you're seeing tens of thousands of alerts a day across your manufacturing fleet and not really sure what's good, what's bad, who's responsible for resolving and researching and investigating it, and not assigning, not training, not teaching the people
Yep.
that are close to those assets. It's like you wasted your money, right?
Yep.
And because you're not hiring or finding the right appropriate people. And to be honest, there's not a lot of organizations out there that are sophisticated enough to be able to leverage this technology to the benefit to your organization. We see it with the system integrators and OEMs, the ones that I call the disinterested parties, right?
Yep.
I would actually say CISOs and CIOs are disinterested parties when it actually comes to their plant floor, per se, right?
Yep.
But even the people that design and build, maintain, and support the control systems within their plant that make the goods, which provides revenue for those folks to get a paycheck, are disinterested in how to provide a greater degree of security within that environment. And they're not building relationships with those organizations that are designing and building and maintaining those control systems within their environment.
Right. So let's go to I spend the money, I buy it. How now I believe I'm trying to tune it, let's call it operationalize it, continuous maintenance management of the tool. Because not everybody does that. And these are not just turn it on and forget it or set it and forget it technologies. Continuous maintenance, up feeding and care of these tools is necessary to better understand them.
Well, it's a lift, right? I mean, it's like if you want to lose weight, think of all the things that you have to do in order to be able to do that, and whatever path you choose to do that.
Yep.
Whether it's dieting, whether it's medication, whether it's exercising, changing your routines, you have to really make some sacrifices, and you have to be disciplined, right?
Yeah.
And the same with this stuff. You have to make sacrifices. Sacrifices meaning, I don't have the internal staff to do this. I know that. I'm not going to be able to get them there anytime soon. How do I find somebody to help me? Right? Number one. Number two is which tool do I pick? Right? How do I go about doing that? Who do I talk to?
Mhm.
That actually has real world experience. That's a true practitioner. People who work in manufacturing facilities day in and day out, every day, all day, that's what they do. Right?
Yep.
If you're going to talk to an IT VAR who's just doing something, who's just transacting, just doing a commercial transaction to sell you the software, they're just to sell you the software. They're not going to teach you how to use it. They're not going to teach you how to implement it. They're not going to train your staff, right?
Yep.
They're not going to show you how to make it actionable, right? Operationalize it, as you stated, to tune it. There's those gaps where you have to start looking at it from a broader perspective instead of whatever narrow path you usually go down when you're picking technologies. And you have to be able to convey that up to your leadership, to the people who sign the checks, whether it be the board, the CEO, the president, being able to explain to them where you have blind spots, right? Instead of just masking it, to rip the Band-Aid off and say, here's what the problem is, and I don't know how to deal with this, not effectively, because I don't have the relationships, I don't have the partnerships, I'm unfamiliar with the assets that are in these plants, I don't know what the people in the plants do every day, right? I don't know the technologies that they have down there, I don't know how their networks are set up.
Well, the tools do a lot of stuff. They do cybersecurity, vulnerability management. They do end of life asset identification. They're great at asset visibility. They do patch management, kind of, if you look at it, of how you need to, based on firmware versions. They do a lot of monitoring, intrusion detection monitoring, anomalies in the environment. The tools are there for a lot of things.
They give you a path forward. The tools give you a path forward. You just have to follow the path, and you have to learn how to read the footprints or the trails that it's leaving you, right? I mean, you have to learn how to read those, right? Just as if you were hunting, where do you go looking for the best place to find the game that you're chasing, right?
Well, what's important to you as an organization? What are you trying to solve for? What is your business use case? What are you trying to get out of these technologies, and let that kind of help drive part of that narrative, I think.
I don't think they're trying to get anything out of it. I think what they're trying to do is satisfy a need that says I checked the box and I have a technology, number one. But the real driving thing is being profitable, right? How do I make goods today is, the most effective, cost-effective, efficient, safe way as possible, right?
Yep.
That's their driving goal as a manufacturer, is to be able to make your goods, without unplanned, unscheduled downtime in a safe manner, right? Keep
Yeah.
the, and worry about my supply chain,
Right.
right? Selling my goods. When it comes to cybersecurity around those control systems, to them, they may treat it as a necessary evil,
Yeah.
but at the same time, they're not studying what evil is per se. They might be looking at it from the standpoint of what they've witnessed, what in the media as they read it, or what they've heard in other board meetings that they've sat in on. But they're really not assessing the risk and the manner of doing tabletop exercises, having an incident response plan. I mean, I've yet to run into a manufacturer that has an incident response plan on their plant floor, and I've been in hundreds of plants. If you get an attack, what is your plan? I know who the first responder is, and it's not some IT security guy. It's going to be your operators that are out there on that plant floor, or your first
Yeah.
responders.
Oh, without doubt. They're the ones standing in front of the machines that understand what to do, where the e-stop buttons are, how to disconnect if they're required to do that. You're 1,000% correct on that.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the network architecture. It's different on the OT side than the IT side. And I say that with a caveat. The OT teams are very, very good at using PLCs and other devices, that's network segmentation devices, to hide, protect themselves, shield themselves from adversaries or even internal IT threats.
Yeah, I would say most of the networks in the control system and arena are pretty primitive, to be honest with you, based on the
Okay.
technology that they use, flat networks, layer 2 unmanaged switches. I mean, you would never find that at the enterprise, right? Switches and technology have been out there in decades, not a few years. IT doesn't keep core switches and firewalls and, routing platforms around for 10, 15, 20 years. They keep them around for several, right?
Yeah.
On the plant floor, we don't see that. And at the same time, you have a networking team, or you have a partner that's helping you with your network. On the plant floor, you don't have any of that.
Mhm.
You got a combination of a bunch of different groups that have been cobbled together, machine centers on your plant floor, and connecting devices, especially if you have grown through mergers and acquisitions. Documentation gets lost. People are unsure what's where, what's connected to what. There's a wide range of technologies that are out there. It's not standardized. You might find 5, 7, 8, 10 different networking technologies on your plant floor built into those machine centers out there. There's been no standardization on it. I mean, there are clients that say, yeah, we standardize on Cisco or Stratix. Yeah, some, but you're never 100% there, number one. And those are few. Those are your black polar bears, that actually have a plan and are managing their environment to that level. But I would say 98% of them out there, it's still the wild, wild west on their network.
I would say you're probably pretty accurate from what I see as well. I'm seeing the exact same thing.
Yeah. And they don't manage it to the level like IT does with their networks, right? Controlling traffic flows, intrusion prevention, oversubscription of the data moving through there, setting priority, quality of service, the firewalling, the route switch, the VLAN strategies, the IP addressing schemes, all of the things that IT does a really good job in managing an enterprise network, you very rarely see on the plant floor. We're starting to see VLANs out there, but even then you'll see clients using private IP addresses, within their network that are public facing. I mean, it's crazy some of the stuff that we find in these environments.
Well, and that brings up change management. IT again has a very robust, well-defined change management process. OT normally, not everybody's the same, but normally there is no patches that apply to the operating systems. There is
Not a
no,
plan, that's for sure.
well, yeah, there's no updating hardware. It's more replaced obsolescence. They'll run something until it dies, a break fix model, and then they will figure it out. Same with patching. Because there's so many unknowns of what could go wrong if you update or you patch that are interconnected that you might not even know about.
And there's thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities in a medium-sized manufacturing client with firmware and operating systems and applications that have been patched in several years or a decade or longer, maybe more, maybe 2 decades. Never been patched. And so that vulnerability list, the CVEs as they're called, just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And then you get into support, and you're still, hundreds of levels below on your firmware revisioning that you haven't touched in all those years, and you got it into life into support assets, which is the other thing is we find a lot of that. There hasn't been capital investments made in the majority of the manufacturing environments, especially those that are owned and operated by private equity.
Well, yeah, I think that as a general rule, private equity likes to buy stuff and take the assets and like strip them dry
Run it till it breaks,
Yeah, leave it there.
Yeah.
So how would you say the human factor? Let's take the technology aside. Let's look at the silver tsunami as we hear it often. Let's look at the overworked, already have 15 jobs, don't want another one, please find somebody else mentality. You look at all of the human pieces of this puzzle. How big of a role is that playing into this?
Huge. It's massive, right? Which is where, some people might think automation and AI is going to, help solve some of that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, somebody still has to be able to program, support, and engineer and manage those systems, right? And you're getting to the point, what was the stat last year for every 2 people that leave, only one's coming back into the environment, and not everybody wants to work in manufacturing.
Right.
And so what are you getting? And so from a cybersecurity perspective, when you're talking about technology, you're not getting the best of the best, right? You're getting, to your point, you're getting a jack of all trades and master of none of them. It's got a responsibility from everything from making sure that there's toner in the printer, fixing a broken monitor, to, oh, you're the networking guy and you're the cybersecurity professional. You got no training, right? You have no real background in the field, right? You don't work with the top tier technologies that are out there. And at the plant level, when you say cybersecurity to them, they point their finger north to corporate and say, that's the enterprise IT cybersecurity InfoSec's job. And then you turn around and you look at the machine over here and you open up the panel that's got all this technology in it. It's like, this is a target. Who's responsible for this? And you get that deer in the headlight look.
Everybody says, not me. And it's musical chairs, and there's 3 chairs and there's 8 people. So somebody's going to stand up and get stuck.
Right. And when you hear IT leadership saying that, everybody's responsible, that just means nobody's responsible.
Right. No, I get it. But at the end of the day, I would say that's probably the easiest one to address, because there are organizations like Design Group that have the skill sets, the expertise,
but a lot of our peers don't.
Ability to help support these organizations, to provide guidance, to provide that, whatever you want to call it, staff aug, you want to call it, in managed services, whatever the model is. We can help organizations. So that really shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, but even if you look at the very large technology companies that are out there, and you could take, whether they're the Worldwides or the CDWs, the Guide Points, or even the big 4 or 6 accounting firms that are out there that, that have they have the knowledge, but what they don't have is the ability to operate and execute in the plant space. They don't, right? And they're all and all of them, the ones that I just mentioned, they're either trying to develop services. Right, which is very hard to do, right? Yep. And so how are they handling it? Most of them are just recommending, this is what you should do, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to buy. All right, good luck with that.
Well, as organizations are trying to figure that out, they need to, as they're interviewing and talking to their local SIs, they need to make sure they're screening for cybersecurity best practices, for expertise, for practitioner skill sets that meet what they're trying to find, not just a systems integrator that can program a PLC with ladder logic or whatever. These are different skill sets, but again, they're there, they're available, the resources there.
It's a skill set, but it's also organizationally how you're going to define that and set that up, right? As you hear me say all the time, you got to get all the liars in the same room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means you got to bring all the right folks to the table who have a stake in this game to determine how you're going to move forward. And that's where it becomes very difficult, where that's not happening. Plant managers working with the CIO and the CISO, working with the OEMs and the system integrators and the technology partners, getting all of those folks in the same spot, getting past the architecture to try to dig into what are the requirements that you're really trying to uncover, which is basically, I want to secure and protect my plant floor so I can continue to make goods without being disrupted, right? Without a material breach and without somebody shutting me down and or breaking my stuff or hurting my people. How do you get that coalition together to work through this? And that's like I said earlier, it's like trying to find a black polar bear. All right.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some out there. There is probably hiding in the black woods in the Sahara Desert.
Well,
so
it's rare, and we're in this game every day.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a coalition like that together that's got a collaboration that's far and wide. Even if they have a certain group of people that have that responsibility, you don't see the local level being brought into the fold.
Right. Nope, you're right.
And being a part of it.
Yeah. So you touched on visibility earlier. I mentioned segmentation. I mentioned OT teams and the controls layers using PLCs as network segmentation devices. I look at visibility, and I'm often, let's call it scared, for lack of a better term, for that false sense of security, meaning organization comes in, they believe they're seeing 100% of their assets. They believe they're covered. They believe they're in good shape. And the reality may be they're seeing 50% or 30% or 60%. So the blind spots that are there can be more harmful than knowing the vulnerabilities of what you do have. At least if you know what you have, you can do something to address it. If you have no idea, to me, that's a huge miss.
Yeah, well, they don't validate, and you can't validate without having key personnel that work in those manufacturing facilities to show you where all of those assets are that drive those machine centers to make the goods within your plant, right? What IT likes to do is they want to try to do it, from a virtual logical perspective, meaning I just want to put something in, try to get it into the right spot and collect and scan whatever I can see from that location. That's where you find that they're missing all these process areas, cells, zones, and lines and assets that are out there, the blind spots, as you call it. But they don't know what those blind spots are because they're not familiar enough with the plant, and they're not talking to the people at the plant that know where all that stuff is at. And we go through this every single time when we do the visibility studies, and we're out there with the engineering team or the electricians or the operations group who know when that machine's not running right, where it is that they need to go look, where they're going to at least start, right? And they're going to go to that panel, and they're going to open that panel up where the PLCs and the drives and the HMIs are, the network switches and any flow meters, anything else they might have in that environment that's connected to the network. And they're going to start there. Do I have power, right? Has anybody made any changes to the PLCs? Is there anything new that's been stuck in this environment that I can physically see, right? And the IT organizations are never going to see that. They're never going to know what's going on down there. And so they cannot help from that perspective, right? What they can do is recognize that if you believe that you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah.
And recognizing that, so you can go get in another room where there's people in there that know that stuff better than you do who can help you out.
Well, there's that, and that, that's one piece of it. Then you look at, and you mentioned this in the very first 3 minutes today, incident response, how you don't see incident response on the OT side. And what I would say is when I do see some incident response on the OT side, they normally don't have a holistic enterprise approach to incident response. Meaning, if I were to ask the SOC, who's going to manage, who do you call on the plant floor if there's a problem? They can't tell me somebody. If I talk to the OT team and I say, hey, let's say that your HMI comes up encrypted, who do you call? Somebody in IT, I don't really know. So there is no collaboration. There's not both, they're not all working together.
Well, IT is going to be risk adverse, meaning that if they don't manage that asset, they don't control it, they didn't pick it, they didn't program it, configure it, or set it up, they're not going to touch it.
Yeah.
Right? They're just not, because it's not their responsibility. One, they don't own the asset in the truest sense. They don't own the asset. Two, that they played little to no role in why it's there. In many cases, the machine's probably been there longer than the 25-year-old IT person standing there looking at it, is,
Yep.
trying to troubleshoot it. It's so. Long story short is that they're going to shy away from that stuff because they don't know what it is, they don't know what it does, and it wasn't their choice. And why should I support a Windows 7 machine or a PLC? What? Siemens? What?
Yep.
Omron? What? Modbus T? What? I mean, they're going to fall off.
Yeah.
Right. And so now you have to find people within your organization that know what that stuff is. They know what it does. Know how to work with it. Know how to touch it. Right.
Yeah. No, you're right. I would say of all of the things that create some of the gaps that we're seeing, probably the biggest, and we talk about this a lot, is the IT OT collaboration. We don't see, if I could draw up a plan, I would say, okay, I'm going to take the IT person that's responsible for cybersecurity, and for the next 45 to 60 days, he's going to work as a plant engineer and work alongside that controls engineer to understand the technology that he's trying to effectively support. And then I think I would pluck that OT person, I would give him some IT visibility into what it looks like as well, the way that it's different, and see if I could cross train so they understand what each other does to maybe try and help each other some better.
I don't think that works.
Okay.
The reason why I say that is the person that you choose to do that isn't going to stick around for that. Depending, you'd have to look at that individual and figure out what their career path and goals are, right? And for somebody who comes from the IT world, went to school to be an IT professional, has always worked in an office, data center, enterprise environment, is not likely to want to work in a plant environment. You can almost bet on that, right?
Yeah.
And as we've always seen, it's always easier to take industrial people and provide them the skills necessary to learn how to work with this technology and let them grow into this, because they've made a career choice, but at least initially, to work in this type of environment.
Okay.
Another option is go find organizations that do this today, that recognize that there are industrial engineering and organizations out there that have people that work in the manufacturing environment every day, all day, right?
Yeah.
Your IT person, if you're just dropping them in there to give them a taste of it, just to see this is what it's like, what it means, is just a check the box kind of a career learning experience, and then boom, bop, they're moving off into something else. Yeah, that's what you're going to find, right? But it has to be a career path to want to be able to work in a manufacturing environment. It's rare to find people that go from IT that move into an industrial arena and want to stay in that space. Maybe if they did it as an internship, worked in industrial space, and then got an IT and went on, you might see them want to come back. But a pure IT programmer, networking professional, somebody who wants to be really, really at the top tier of their profession, isn't going to go out there and look at a network that's 20 years old and say, oh, I really want to work with that stuff.
Yeah. It's not glitzy and glamorous. I get it. So, again, we see so many IT professionals that are now tasked, that have responsibility, as I like to say, for OT cybersecurity as part of their enterprise-wide endeavor, but they don't have the authority to affect change, have never put on any steel-toed boots and gone down to the plant. How can they begin to address it if they don't know what they're trying to fix?
No, like that's what I said earlier. If you believe you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? And so, you're not gonna get them to take that on holistically per se. I've just never seen it really stick in that manner. And I'll give you an example, and this is true. That person or that group that's being asked to drive that particular strategy and objective within the organization, who would be one of the first people that you'd want to get a hold of and talk to? The people who design and build, maintain, and support the control system in your plant.
Yep.
We're one of the largest, if not the largest, system integrator in the food bev industry. How many times do IT professionals call the design group?
Not that often.
If at all, right?
Well, I was trying to be kind.
Yes. Right. And so there's the myths.
Yeah.
Right. If you've got 100 plants and we're working in 20 of them, generating, for ourselves several millions or $10 million plus a year in business, you would think that IT person tasked in charge with that OT cybersecurity strategy would pick up the phone, call the plant manager and engineering teams and say, who are the top system integrators we're working with? I need to meet with them. Until that starts happening, then I'll know it's changing.
Yeah.
And otherwise they're just pissing in the wind.
Yeah. And that definitely hasn't happened yet.
No. And the way that we run our business is we work with the local plant teams, or we're doing cleanup in aisle 9. Right.
Yeah, good point. We could have a day's worth of conversation on this. and unfortunately, hopefully for the listeners out there, somebody takes this back to their organization and says, hey, I heard these two guys today, and here's some questions I need to ask us about how are we doing this, or what are we doing there? So that if it spurs thought, conversation, and helps somebody, that's the goal. If you don't know where to start, call us. We'll give you some advice. We'll guide you. We'll help you. We'll partner with you. There's no reason to do it alone. Can't do it.
Well, there's a big difference between corporate law and criminal law, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to be a corporate lawyer, working on big commercial transaction and business deals, chasing criminals is not going to be your thing, right? And you got to think it in that context, right? And so what you need to do is find the right profession that's geared for this industrial world that wants to work in this space.
Yep. Great conversation, Dino. Hopefully this helps somebody. Guys, keep listening, following, reach out for advice. We're here to help you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.